Welcome to Nuked Radio. This is episode 79. Today is Tuesday, December 11th, 2012. I'm your host, Christina Consolo, and with me today is Jules. Mr. X from NightWatch is here, and our guest today is Early2it from YouTube. Now, after Thursday's show, I went in to have my thyroid scan done, and if you guys heard me Saturday night, I was on Truth Frequency Radio with Chris and Sherry Geo. And so you might have heard this already, a little intel from the ultrasound technician. The woman that did my scan said that she had been doing ultrasounds for 21 years. And she used to do 4 thyroid scans a week. And lately she's been doing 10 a day for the last couple months, all on women, and almost all of them are showing pathology. Now, she doesn't see the patient after the scan, so she doesn't know how much of these are benign, cysts, or cancerous. But I'm hoping to get my results later on today. I wanted to share an email that I got from somebody in Japan. Christina, I've been a fan for a long time. Keep up the good work. Good luck also on the health front. My advice is to be a lot more positive about natural healing. I've seen and even helped people do wonders over the years. Ironically, I'm going to need it for myself as I live in Tokyo, sort of. When things blew at Fukushima, my wife was outside most of the day, and that's bad. And my thyroid may be going south. As you can imagine, the hospital that specializes in thyroid cases downplays radiation big time, and lots of folks probably can't even get a referral or afford the trip to Tokyo to deal with things. We spent a lot of time since 3/11 on the road and will be finally be moving before long. I don't know about your situation, but my wife and I have found the southern half of the United States to be a lot less radioactive than the northern half. We went to Vancouver last June and had heart pains, which we had never had before. We felt a lot better immediately after heading down to Vegas, and it's a bad sign if Vegas seems cleaner than Vancouver. Regards, Paul. Now, the big bad United States conducted a nuclear test on Wednesday of last week. I've gotten a lot of emails from people about this story. How could they do this? This was reported on RT, published December the 8th. Iran has strongly condemned the U.S. for carrying out a nuclear test in Nevada this week, saying the move threatens world peace and shows a hypocritical set of double standards set by Washington when it comes to nuclear research. The Iranian Foreign Ministry said, the Wednesday detonation proves that the U.S. foreign policy relies heavily on the use of nuclear weapons, disregarding UN's calls for global disarmament. Why can't I say that word? Press TV reports. The experiment also drew criticism from Japan, with Hiroshima Mayor Kazumi Matsu wondering why the Obama administration carried out the test, despite saying he would seek a nuclear-free world. The test proves that the U.S. could use nuclear weapons any time, said Hirotami Yamada, who heads the Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Survivors Council. On Friday, it was announced that the Nevada National Security Site had successfully detonated plutonium in a deep shaft Wednesday to test the safety and effectiveness of U.S. nuclear weapons, National Nuclear Security Administration officials said. The subcritical experiment was carried out by scientists at the Los Alamos, New Mexico National Labs and the Sandia National Labs and involved a tiny sample of plutonium bomb material. Subcritical nuclear experiments have been conducted in the U.S. since 1997 in order to help scientists understand how plutonium ages in the stockpile. They use chemical explosives to blow up bits of nuclear materials designed to stop just short of erupting into a nuclear chain reaction, also known as a criticality. It's really bad news, especially for this guy who just told me he wants to move to Vegas. And if you live in the area, you need to contact your government officials right away and condemn this action. This is completely unacceptable. I mean, Nevada already has so many problems with breast cancer and other cancers. In fact, doctors don't even list cause of death. The police do in the state of Nevada. Now, also, after Thursday's show, possibly one of the weirdest stories that I've ever heard. Dozens of utility poles burst into flame in central Texas. This was reported on RSOE, in the Waco Tribune, on KXXV.com, and multiple other news sites. It was also talked about endlessly on numerous forums. Now, I grabbed this from the Jumping Jack Flash website, and there was a note from him. This isn't the first time utility poles have burst into flame. This is the first time it's been multiple poles going up at once in the same geographic area. Anywhere from 75 to 100 poles all seem to catch fire at the same time. Now, this gentleman goes on to say, a man was found dead and burning on a utility pole in Detroit, as mentioned in the 1110 update. A utility pole burst into flame in coastal Hyannis, Massachusetts, as mentioned in the 1019 update. A utility pole went up into flames on Valley Road in coastal Greenwich, Connecticut, as mentioned in the 1006 update. A utility pole burst into flame in coastal Tacoma, Washington, as mentioned in the 929 update. And a utility pole burst into flame in Las Vegas. Again, Las Vegas, Nevada, spread to trees in 6 homes and injured 4 people, as mentioned in the 923 update. So what's happening? It's probably a combination of things. First, the poles themselves are wood, and wood itself is absorbing hydrogen sulfide and or methane and spontaneously combusting. In the case here in Texas, this was probably a hydrogen sulfide plume blowing through that area coming in off the dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico. Hydrogen sulfide is reactive with copper, as in power lines, so the plume hits the pole, there's a spark, and the wood, which has probably been absorbing hydrogen sulfide for some time now, erupts into flame, or the gas itself ignites and starts the wood pole and or the coating of the lines on fire. Obviously, this is a hideous problem. This one problem alone could ultimately ignite much of the industrialized world. And he's got a couple other stories posted here. Something else that happened over the weekend, and I had a couple people that had emailed or posted on Radchick. They were wondering if this nuke test that the U.S. did on Wednesday could be causing these vibration or low frequency anomalies on the seismographs. But that had actually started the Friday before. So unless they've had tests that are ongoing that go on for a period of hours and then stop, I don't think it could be attributed to that. But something else that had been going on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, and I grabbed this from multiple postings on a number of different Facebook pages that I subscribe to and some forums, that loud booms and a very squeaky metallic sound like broken guitar strings or squeaky bed springs were occurring in the skies over the following states: Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Oklahoma, New Jersey, and Ohio. Notice the states, and remember the sinkhole map that we talked about last Thursday, or the explosion map, or how about Jack Reed's theory of the Gulf of Mexico being connected all the way through the mouth of the St. Lawrence Seaway with a branch into South Carolina. That's where all these sounds were being heard. There's a video of it on YouTube from the Virginia area, and they actually captured it quite well.
What is that?
We've also had two really big earthquakes since Thursday's show, a 7.4 in Japan and a 7.1 in Indonesia yesterday. Several reports, one from Arnie Gunderson, saying that the earthquake caused reactors 1 numbers to spike, which has happened after past larger earthquakes also. In my opinion, the corium's being shook up under the ground. But the good news is reactor 4 is still standing. So we'll keep an eye on this like we all do every day, all day long. But we're going to be hitting the sinkhole story pretty hard today and Thursday as the situation in Louisiana is continuing to rapidly deteriorate. And I've got just 3 quick stories from Enenews. This was posted December 11th. Official updates: the giant sinkhole has started bubbling up around the edges, and now it's coming from the center. And they have updates from Texas brine. Starting on 12/6, there was very light bubbling that appeared sporadically around the sinkhole perimeter. On 12/7, there was intermittent light gas bubbling that continued around the sinkhole perimeter. On 12/9, monitoring revealed bubbling in the center of the sinkhole. And on 12/10, bubbling in the center of the sinkhole was observed again. Also reported on Enenews, December 10th, dangerous hydrogen sulfide gas was detected Friday in fumes coming from crude oil. And we've had this hydrogen sulfide situation off and on. They say that it's detected, and then it's not detected in the monitors around the community, but it seems like this is getting worse. Company officials said Friday Texas brine is looking at equipment to scrub the possible sulfur-laden oil and put it in sealed transport containers to prevent any H2S releases. They are looking into ways to address the hydrogen sulfide issue with the sulfur in the oil. That the oil has sulfur content is not unheard of, although Louisiana is more often known for its sweet crude, which has a low sulfur content. Sour crude has a higher sulfur content. John Boudreau, director of the Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, acknowledged that discovery of H2S from the oil fumes and said it may point to the source of the gas being different in the investigatory well rather than the vent well. So what he's saying there is the oil is coming from somewhere else. We have an idea where it's coming from, and we've talked about this and how it relates to the BP disaster, and that's why we wanted to get this gentleman on today. Also, one more story. Worst case at giant sinkhole, great fear it could explode. Area to be a sacrifice zone. Very degrading situation. This was posted December 9th, and this was from Garland Robinet at WWL Radio. During an interview, this is what was said. The host asked, "What is the worst case scenario?" His guest, Mary Lee Orr, Lean Executive Director, said, "I'll speak from the people's perspective. Their biggest fear is there could be an explosion there because they see so much of this bubbling gas, and because of what they can't see, there's also natural gas on the land. We're only seeing what's coming up in the water. Their great fear is that it could explode." A chemist that was also being interviewed, Wilma Subra, who's a technical advisor, said the issue is how big this sinkhole is going to be. The fear is that this area is going to be a sacrifice zone and that these people will not be allowed to go back into their homes because it's being fed by these production zones of oil and gas. It's still migrating. So it's a very active situation, and it's a very degrading situation. Now with us today is a gentleman who has a very informative YouTube channel, Early2it. I've had a number of comments and emails to get him on the show. He's been reporting on the melting methane hydrate situation even before the BP disaster. And we could probably do a few hours just on that topic alone, but since we only have really an hour to hit the highlights, I don't want to waste any more time. So welcome, Mr. Early2it, to Nuked Radio.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm so glad you're here. We had a couple of lovely conversations before the show today, and I wanted to let you know too that we spent a good portion of the last 2 shows talking about methane because of an interview that Madison Rupert had done on End the Lie. And on Thursday's show we read the list of events from Jumping Jack Flash of all the things that happened just on December the 5th. It took 20 minutes to read just the headlines of these explosive events. Corpses being found in low-lying areas, Early, you have a wealth of knowledge about this situation. You've done a huge amount of research, and you've collaborated with some other YouTubers as well. And knowing what you know, that the sinkhole is just a symptom of a much bigger problem, how concerned are you for people that are living in this area?
Well, I don't really think in terms of just the area because the problem is global. It started in the Gulf of Mexico, but all of these frozen hydrates, they are connected in like rivers running along the tectonic plates and boundaries completely around the entire globe. They're all connected, and running into these rivers of frozen hydrates are like veins that shoot from under the continents and all the land masses. So this is a global problem. It's not, there's really nowhere to go that you're going to get away from this. It's going to affect the entire Earth. There's no getting around that.
Matt Simmons, who was a whistleblower during the BP disaster, wanted everyone living around the Gulf of Mexico to be provided with a full-on NBC respirator. Every inhabitant around the Gulf of Mexico, because he said just the fumes from crude oil alone are more toxic than mustard gas.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But the thing is it's going to take everybody by surprise because the melt is occurring exponentially. How you've been, if you've ever been around any of the people who do the multi-level marketing, and they talk about how if you take a penny and you double it every day, you'll be a millionaire in a month.
Yeah.
Well, you've heard that before, right?
Right.
Well, see, this is what the melt is occurring exponentially. It's not like melting ice, So, but the thing with the doubling, right? You don't notice it for like the first 25 days. The amount of money is insignificant. It's not until the last 2 or 3 days do you notice any major amount of money. You see what I'm saying? But you'll still be a millionaire. Exponential. The human mind doesn't think in exponential terms. We think linearly. So it's hard to get our head around how this is happening, and that's why it's going to take everyone by surprise because it'll go from a quarter to half to the whole. All of the deposits globally will all dissolve all at the same time. So that's the real thing to try to get people to understand. I find it much more difficult. You know how back when we first started invading countries, this preemptive war, and everybody was trying to show how much money we were spending on war every day, and they were doing all these videos, trying to get people to grasp just the massive amounts of money that we're spending. Well, this reaction, it makes that pale in comparison because you're talking about something global, So, I don't see how you could really, even if you did get everyone masked and everything, right? Mm-hmm. Like I say, it's going to happen so fast. It's going to happen, you're not going to notice until it doubles for the second or last time. And when it does, by the time it does that, it's way, way too late. There's nothing really can be done.
Something that I've noticed ever since the start of this Louisiana sinkhole is the trees around the sinkhole. Whenever they do a flyover, they'll like pan out at the end. And those trees were all green at the beginning when it first happened, and then there was a very severe progression of a die-off of trees around the sinkhole. And now when they pan out, you can see, this isn't something that's seasonal down there. These trees stay green all year round is my understanding, this type of cypress that occurs in this area. But everything around this sinkhole now is dead, and not just in that area, but far away from it. And it seems to be following lines where you'll have like a set of green trees that are mixed in with the dead trees that seems to be following the direction of this sinkhole, and appears that it's pointing towards the New Madrid Fault. It's pointing north.
Well, you're familiar with Jack Reed's theory of the tectonic plate boundaries there?
Yes.
Well, see, like I said, these frozen hydrocarbons, they lay along all of the tectonic plates and boundaries. So that's why the trees, you're going to find dead animals in the woods. You're going to find dead people in low-lying areas, following all of these plate boundaries and tectonic plates, and veins of this stuff shoot out into a lot of the deposits where they talk about, where they do the fracking and stuff, so, you're going to find it coming out of the ground for hundreds and hundreds of miles, all the way up into Canada, across over into the East Coast, running all the way up to Nova Scotia, all the way down to Antarctica and around Antarctica, all the way across Africa, through there. I mean, anywhere that the plates and boundaries come together, that's where you find this gas, and it's all caught up in this melt, every bit of it. And the melt is occurring exponentially. So right now, there's no way of knowing at what point it is. But it's on such a large scale. It's like I was saying, you take a penny and you double it every day, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, etc. 32 cents, that's the first 4 or 5 days, right? You've only got 32 cents. So you don't notice that you got anything, but by the end of the month, you'll have $1 million. It's just that you're not going to notice it until you get towards the last week of the month. You follow what I'm saying about the exponential progress of this reaction?
Absolutely. And you explained to me in terms of like the geology, because we've been watching earthquakes happen from this region for a while. I've noticed ever since the BP disaster that there were a number of earthquakes that were occurring starting, what really brought my attention to it was BB Arkansas around the beginning of 2011 when they had the bird die-offs. And then when I was looking at that area and watching news reports, they were reporting a lot of earthquakes there as well. And they've kind of spread out from there, and now, we're seeing them happen in Kentucky and Tennessee, and we have a lot of reports of the ground shaking and these boom sounds and noises that people are hearing, especially the booms. And there's been a couple of like underground explosions that have occurred on both sides of the New Madrid Fault. Can you kind of like help us conceptualize that methane hydrate layer? You explained it to me like it being a big lake.
In the Gulf, right, they call it a lake of methane. That's where most of the natural gas for the United States comes from that lake, it's a giant deposit of methane. Now, the hydrocarbons are different than the methane. That methane is just a frozen gas under pressure. So, but that's where most of the gas for the United States comes from. But that's where the reaction really started. That's where it really began. But see, one of the main rivers, like I was saying about Jack Reed's theory of those plates, well, see, right there, according to his theory, is a newly discovered plate, and it runs right through that methane lake. So what that means is the main river, so to speak, of these frozen hydrocarbons is caught up in that melt. And so as the reaction grows, the rivers, so to speak, running along the tectonic plates up the continental United States, out towards the East Coast, down South America, they're being drawn towards the reaction, and then it's like pulling a hypodermic needle. You pull the needle up, and then the medicine is drawn up out of the vial. Where all the veins run under the land masses and stuff. They're moving towards the main rivers running along the tectonic plates, and that's pushing land up and down. That's releasing pockets of methane underground, and sometimes underground, all it takes is a spark. If you, for instance, like methane, if methane gets into the air in enough concentration, it'll form into a cloud. And all it takes is a 5 to 8% concentration of methane in a cloud, and then a cell phone can ignite it. Anything can ignite it. Now, if the ground is moving up and down and there's a pocket of methane and there's flint rock or iron or something like that, there's going to be a spark, and so you'll have an explosion underground, and is how I'm explaining the increase in earthquakes, the increase these loud noises and booms that we're hearing, because it also, as it moves, it pulls in air and water behind it. The ground rises and falls, so that causes tremors. And also, it acts like an accordion sometimes. So that's why people will hear these humming noises, these sounds. It depends on the geology under your feet as to how you're going to hear it. Whether you're going to hear booms. If there's lots of natural gas underneath your feet, you might hear booms. If you've got granite foundation under your feet, then you'll hear like metal cracking or whatever. If it's like in Florida where you've got lots of honeycomb type lime foundation, and you'll hear it like a trumpet or horn sound. You see, it totally depends on the ground under your feet when these hydrates are moving as to how the sound that you're going to hear. Now, a lot of times it'll seem like it's coming from the air because the sound is being forced out with such great pressure that it will reverberate off of the atmosphere back. So it will sound like, to most people hearing it several miles away, that it's coming from, the atmosphere from above. But people who are closer to it, it'll sound like it's coming from under their feet, So, but it is something that would be expected. It's like the hydrogen sulfide. I explained in my videos months ago that if the sinkhole, right, one of the main contributing factors to the sinkhole was the mutated bacteria, the bacteria that occur naturally that eat oil and gas. Really, they're not bacteria. They're from the kingdom of Archaea, but they're microorganisms. And what they do is they oxidize methane, and then they respirate elemental sulfur. And then there's these bacteria that ferment the elemental sulfur into hydrogen sulfide. So that's where it goes. So months ago, I was explaining that if one of the main causes for the sinkhole was the mutated bacteria and microorganisms because of the introduction of synthetic DNA into the environment, then what we should expect to see would be rivers of hydrogen sulfide flowing through there. And just like that, we've had confirmation twice now that they've hit hydrogen sulfide. And then the last one, they said that it was a hydrogen sulfide flow. They didn't say they hit a pocket of hydrogen sulfide, so that's just more evidence that it is the mutated microorganisms and bacteria that are eating the reservoirs, our national security. It's called the National Strategic Oil and Gas Reserves, and they're stored in those salt domes all around Louisiana. There's probably, I don't know, maybe 1,500 or so of them that they store oil and gas in, and these organisms have mutated. They become super eaters, and they're experiencing a population explosion, and they're eating all of the reserves, and that's why it's that's another theory as to why it's a homeland security national risk, is involved in all that. But anyway, the hydrogen sulfide just confirms what we were expecting. That's all it does. It's the same with these booms. I was telling people, well, if this reaction was happening, then this is what you could expect, because it would pull in all of that, those hydrocarbons from all around the globe. They're all connected, so they would all be pulled. The reason you can't, and if you get a map, you can really see that it all is being pulled towards the Gulf, even from other places in on the globe. Like, for instance, that thing that happened in Alaska in the last few days, that could actually be connected or a part of this melt, this methane melt that's going on. Now, the hydrocarbons, right, what happens with them is as they dissolve in the water, they form into methane. So, but the lake in the Gulf of Mexico, I call it a glacier because it's already methane. It's just a giant frozen block of methane that we've been getting gas from for, I don't know, maybe 100 years. But does any of that help you understand it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking for that that story right now. I had one pulled up. There was an underground fire that happened over the weekend in Wilmington, but they didn't say it, just that traffic lights were affected on a number of intersections. Crews have been working to fix those lights. They don't say anything about this fire event, but the one that was going on in Alaska, I guess this started a couple months ago, and we've also had reports from even Australia that there's enormous amounts of methane and hydrogen sulfide coming out of coal seams at a rate that they've never measured before. And it has scientists very alarmed. And
well, I would hope it would have them alarmed. I mean, you know, like I said, this is a exponential reaction, and you know, if you could figure out where it is, at what stage of progress it's at, you know, that could tell you a lot. Then you could know that what it'll be. You could actually, because of the way it's happening, you could actually project a deadline as to when it would reach half, and then when it would double for the last time. You could actually figure that out if you had, you know, information on it. Other than that, you're just going to have to wait and see, you know, what it does, and then you'll be able to say, okay, well, we're about halfway now, you know.
it seems like the Gulf of Mexico has become almost like the weakest link in this whole global situation. You know, Matt Simmons had talked about that huge methane reservoir, and he was worried that the BP well might actually turn into a methane volcano. He actually said that on an interview that I posted. And prior to that, 2 years prior to that, they were finding asphalt volcanoes on the Gulf of Mexico seafloor, very close to where some of those strategic reserves that you were talking about are located. And just in the last 2 days, I've been checking out some of the helicopters because of all the shaking and vibrating and stuff that's been going on. And I noticed Kingsville, Texas, had a really long sustained shaking event yesterday that went on for a couple hours. And when you look at a map of where Kingsville is, just north of there is what's called Bryan Mound in Freeport, Texas, which is a huge salt dome with 226 million barrels of oil in it. Big Hill, which is just a little bit north of there near Beaumont, Texas, in a city called Winnie, has 160 million barrels inside its salt dome. And then we have two huge ones that are in Louisiana. One is located near Lake Charles, and one is located near Baton Rouge. And we've been watching the nuke plant up there too, and it's been leaking from its pipes underground since last January, but it got a lot worse in August. It seems in August is when things really took off with this problem, or where there were visible signs like from the bubbling in the bayous. But that bubbling is being reported up to 70 miles away, if not farther. It appears that that whole area is destabilizing. And you know a little bit more about like the aquifers in that area. What do you see as far as like the progression starting from that point? Because I'm really worried about the residents and the nuke plants that are in that area, but really in all areas.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I see it as a global situation. It's already affected the weather patterns globally. They're already being affected, you know. But think about this, right? There are more living organisms underground, and they're connected in a net, kind of like we're all connected in the air. You know, all of us breathe air. We're all connected in the air. Well, underground, these microorganisms and bacteria and things, they're connected in a net, so to speak. I mean, they're all connected globally. And if you took all of the biomass of these creatures, and it would be at least, that they know of, would it be at least 6 times the biomass of all the living creatures on the surface of the earth. So you're talking about an enormous, I mean, the size of this thing is really, it's almost impossible to get your mind around. You have to literally think exponentially to really understand the scope of this thing and why. Because I often wonder, well, why hasn't it, just all melted since it started? Because it's been going on for a couple of years, and you can see it's progressively getting worse by all of the things that have been happening globally. Like I said, all the dead animals everywhere, all these strange noises people are hearing everywhere, the increase in earthquakes globally, the increase in volcanoes globally, all the earth changes with the extreme weathers that we're experiencing. It's having an effect on all of these things. And one of them can be explained, that is the effect it's having. I'm not saying that it's the main cause. I'm not saying that it's causing all of it. I'm saying it's a major contributor to all of these things that we're witnessing. And as the reaction grows, right, as it doubles, each time it doubles, we're going to see something even greater. You know what I'm saying? Like, the sinkhole just appeared, maybe 3 months ago? The bubblings, people started seeing the bubblings, and then all of a sudden it just appeared. And then in the last 2 or 3 months, sinkholes have been appearing everywhere. You see, that would have been an indicator that it doubled. The reaction reached a critical and doubled at some point, but that doesn't tell you at what level the reaction's at. But it was a new sort of phenomena that just happened all at once, and you've got hundreds of these sinkholes all over the globe now in the last few months. But that tells you that was a point there that it doubled. So whenever it reaches one of those points where it doubles, you're going to see some sort of strange new phenomena, and it'll be on a global scale, and then you'll be able to say, well, okay, that looks like it doubled again. You know what I'm saying? You'll be able to see things like that, and you should expect them. Like the Jumpin' Jack Flash website you talked about, right? Yeah. His theory that he's talking about comes from the same. I read a book back in the 80s. Actually, I was part of a study group. It was a Bible study group, and we were looking into a section of Scripture that I talk about all the time. It's in 2 Peter, and it says that the earth is reserved unto fire, that the world that was destroyed by water, like the flood of Noah. The world was destroyed by water. But in that section it says, but the earth, the heavens and the earth that are now are reserved for fire. So back in the 80s, we were looking into, what could cause a fire so big that it would burn the earth? We had all these different theories, but one of the theories that we looked into was the same theory that Jumping Jack Flash has on his website, which was there was a scientist, I think he was in the 70s, who really cataloged a lot of these hydrocarbon deposits and explained the magnitude of the gas, how much, gave some kind of idea as to how much of the gas it was, and put the theory out there that it was enough gas to literally burn the entire earth to a crisp. So, and that's when we started looking into it as a way of explaining, one of the ways of explaining how the earth, the entire world could be reserved unto fire. But they were looking into it from the scientific point of view of saying it's a possible theory as to what may have caused all the extinctions of the dinosaurs and things in the past,
I want to tell people just for a moment, if you'd like to call in and ask a question, our number is 718-717-8296.
Yeah,
sure.
The animal die-offs, we only touched on that just a little bit, but we've been watching around here, and I'm in Michigan. A lot of the fowl birds have been disappearing for extended periods of time. There was another report this morning out of California. Down in San Diego, we have another massive Humboldt squid die-off. And can you touch on that a little bit more, Early?
Well, the thing is it's not just methane. It's every possible gas you could think of. Because a lot of the gases are the result of, like I said, of the bacteria fermenting different things, like a fermentation process. The bacteria, they respire these different gases, But it's not just methane, it's not just hydrogen sulfide, it's every sort of deadly gas you could possibly imagine. And it'll be coming up in any kind of a crack, that it can get to the surface, So that's one of the things that could be causing a lot of the mass animal die-off, plus the fact that the reaction itself draws on the oxygen in the water and in the air. So you get a lot of, with the dead fish, you simply get all the oxygen in the water being sucked out, and that kills a lot of the fish. Same in the air. You get a lot of the oxygen in an area, and a whole area can be sucked out, and that can cause a lot of animals to die. But I don't mainly contribute all the dead animals to the gas, though I do think that it is a major contributor. I think the main contributor to all the dead animals is the mutations in, like I said, what's causing the chemical reaction, the basis of it was the introduction of the synthetic DNA into the environment, because that triggered a chain reaction in our biosphere. And all of our biosphere has been mutating from the bottom up. It started down in the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, and it's been working its way up through our entire biosphere and deteriorating the whole thing steadily. And they don't tell you a lot. I mean, the media, up until about, I don't know, maybe 5 months ago, I was trying my best to keep stuff that I could find on the internet of all the new diseases and contagions and ailments and conditions and things like that couldn't be identified, that were cropping up all around the world, that were getting linked to mutations, so that I could have something to show people that, well, these mutations, they started in the Gulf of Mexico, and they've been going on now for about 2 years, and they've been steadily deteriorating our biosphere, causing all kinds of new diseases. My last count, I was up before my computer got attacked and everything got taken, and they scrubbed the internet from all the articles. Before that happened, I was up to over 300 never-before-seen new diseases, conditions, ailments that had killed more than 400,000 people globally. You see, now the media, they just come out and say, well, this is, they'll say things like, well, there's an epidemic of meningitis going on. But I think a lot of that is simply hiding all of these mutations that are taking place, that are killing not just people, but are killing animals by the millions and millions. My estimate of animals that had died as a result, the estimate that I'd come up with when I stopped doing it, was over 2 billion living creatures, and over 40 different creatures had gone extinct as a direct effect of mutations to our biosphere that started because of the introduction of synthetic DNA. Did you know now, in fact, I was just looking into a thing that samples were taken of the different areas where they had the red rain and the red water turn to blood, and, different things like that. And samples have been taken from these places, and samples have been taken of the different chemtrails and things. And in every sample that I saw that they had taken, they found dried red human blood cells that were mutated, that were self-replicating. So, that is just an incredible, incredible thing, because if that is true, if this is a global situation where you have in our air, we're breathing them in, it's in our soil, so it's getting into our food, we're eating them, it's in our water. I mean, in every sample that was taken, these mutated sorts of blood cells, and this was human blood cells, they're in all of us, and they have in them that synthetic DNA. So what that means is, like, if you are just like, me or you or anyone who's alive, that will cause the biology on your body, like the microorganisms and things and bacteria that you have and parasites and things that are normally on your body that are beneficial to you, they can mutate and cause all kinds of or morph and cause all kinds of troubles. You know, even could kill you. But for a newborn, like say when a man, the sperm of a man fertilizes an egg in a woman, then when that baby gestates, what happens is that synthetic DNA that's in that dried blood cells, right, it will become active, so that a baby born with that in their blood, right, will literally not be human. They will be a sort of transhuman, because if the synthetic DNA is active in your blood, which that's not possible without going through the process of gestation. You know, it won't be activated unless it's a newborn, but it could be active. And if it is, what will happen is in their brain chemistry, they'll have these. They're like archaea, but they're crystalline and they're silicate fibers. They're living fibers, and they'll be in their brain chemistry. So that will make that newborn literally not a human. It'll be a transhuman sort of creature. And that could be the case with every single newborn on the planet right now. That could be the case. In fact, this could have been going on for more than 20 years, because I just found out it wasn't until 2010 that they actually told us they were putting the synthetic DNA in the water, but they could have been spraying it in the air for 20, 30, 40 years. There's no way to know unless they come out and tell us that it is. But in all the tests, that's what's been found. So that stuff right there, that's what's causing the majority of the dead animals and the majority of the extinctions of creatures that you see on the surface, living on the surface. But we have no way of knowing what kind of damage it's having to the creatures living underground. And like I said, if you took the biomass of all the creatures that live under the water and under the soil, right? If you took the biomass, that is, take them all as a whole and pile them up, and then took all the living creatures on the surface of the earth and piled them up, the creatures that live under our feet and under the water, you know, that pile would dwarf the pile of land creatures, you know, by at least 6 times or greater. And we have no way of even knowing what kind of effect these mutations are having on those creatures. And see, the fact is that everything on the surface of the earth is wholly, completely dependent on what these creatures underneath do. It may take a while before we see the effects of any change in these creatures, but eventually it will make it to the surface of the earth, and it will affect everything on the land. And a lot of people don't think that way, but it is. It's all connected, and just like those creatures underground, the bacteria and the microbes, they're all connected in like a net, you know, that circles the entire globe, just like we have our atmosphere, and we all breathe the air, and there are microbes and organisms in the air and all that stuff. But I don't know if I answered your question or not. You know, I'm just rambling there.
Oh, no, you're doing a great job. I wanted to share an email with everyone that I got today that's very timely considering the discussion that we're having right now. My name is David Andrew Christensen. I am the reluctant patriot, and I believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. In 1977, I worked on an Air Force Academy program at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. The program was classified. It was a precursor for drones and cruise missiles, which could be delivery platforms for Genesis. And he has that in quotes. The following information came to me this weekend from 8 sources, England, Japan, and the United States. Scientists have seen a substantial increase in chemtrails since 2010. They could not understand why until this past week chemtrails are being used to distribute the Katrina virus, which I now call Genesis. Treated water is the least desirable method to distribute Genesis because the stomach acids neutralize the Genesis vaccine. It appears that an injection or absorption through the skin is most productive and desirable way to distribute it. The Katrina virus was distributed through the atmosphere, so it was only logical that the Genesis vaccine be distributed the same way. Please remember that 155 million people are infected. Is this like Cynthia? Is this Craig Venter's
Well,
brainchild?
He gets the credit for it. You know, Obama gave him an award, I think, about 2 months ago for inventing this synthetic DNA and, Cynthia, self-replicating synthetic life forms, But the truth of the matter is he's just simply getting the credit for it, But they, like I said, they could have been doing this for 20 or 30 years because all of it, even Cynthia, the work that was done with money through the Department of Defense. So really the whole thing, even though they say that it's being used to eat the oil, right, that was its reason they dumped it into the Gulf, the truth is they were trying to assess its value as a bioweapon because it's the Defense Department and their money that paid for all the research into this stuff,
Well, from what like Loren Murray has said and other conspiracy theorists, we're in full-blown Agenda 21 depopulation right now. And when you look at, you try to visualize where this is going on, where the BP disaster happened and the use of Cynthia and then the spraying of Corexit, which is ongoing, the Fukushima disaster, which many people, even some reporters in Japan, have said was done intentionally, done on purpose between the U.S. and Israel. They're kind of getting all their bases covered, and where they're filling it in is with the chemtrails. So they're effectively, covering the entire United States, if not the entire northern hemisphere.
Well, see, the thing is the samples that were done of the air and water and stuff, those red blood cells, they are self-replicating. And this could have been going on for a long time. So it's when you talk self-replicating cellular life, it's another exponential sort of reaction. So literally, all the water in the world could turn to blood one day. You could wake up and all the water on Earth could be red with dried human self-replicating blood cells in it. That's a real possibility. But even beyond that, the fact that it's in all of the samples, and these samples were taken from different regions of the globe. They say 155 million people infected. Well, that is nothing. The truth is, every newborn baby, if they have this synthetic stuff in their blood, they will not be human in the same way you and I were human. They will be different, literally, by blood. So really what they've done is they've cut off the entire human race. There are going to be no more people born who won't have those things, those living crystalline fibers, whatever they are. There will be no human born after us that won't have that in their brain chemistry. Now, I've looked at a lot of different theories as to what it's going to do, how it's going to affect people differently. But the thing of it is, the real thing of it is, it's not, when you really look at it, right, this is my opinion, when you really look at it, you can see that what they really were doing was not trying to kill people. They were trying to make us, I don't know if you're familiar with evolutionary theory, but basically what they've done, if this is happening, is they've taken mankind to where the evolutionary theory says we should go anyway, where the theory would take us anyway, only they've done it artificially. They helped evolution, so to speak. So I don't see that it's going to kill so many people as it's going to make another race. So we have two distinct, separate races. One is human and one is transhuman. One's a carbon life form and one is carbon silicate or crystalline life form. So you have two different species, really, of human being on the planet at the same time. Now, why they would want to do that to the human race, that's anybody's guess, but I don't really think they were doing it to kill people. I really think that they believed they were doing good, that they were actually doing something that would be beneficial for the human race when you understand how that's going to change the future humans, so to speak, if you can call them human.
We only have a couple minutes left, and I wanted to touch on really quick your theory of what happened with the telephone pole situation in Texas. The official story was that dust had accumulated on top of the poles and that it was foggy, and the fog acted like a conductor and caused all these poles to catch fire at once. But we had another major heating event in a different part of the world recently that was pretty shocking, and it has to do with the ozone layer and a massive melt that happened. Could you explain to the listeners what your theory is about that situation?
It's got to do with one of the reasons that Corexit is banned everywhere but the United States of America. It's because it becomes part of the rain cycle. It becomes a permanent contaminant. There's no way to remove it. You know, at least with the oil, we could have removed it. But the minute they dump those millions and millions of gallons of Corexit, which, by the way, the real reason for the Corexit is not to disperse oil. It's to provide nutrients for synthetic bacteria to replicate. That's its primary purpose. And they had to add chemicals to the formula in order to get it legally to qualify as a dispersant, you know, so they could say, well, this is dispersant, you know. But anyway, the problem is that the Corexit, the same reaction that it has with the methane in the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico causing the melt, when it gets into the atmosphere, that same reaction starts happening in the atmosphere. And so basically, molecularly, what it does is it causes the oxygen molecule to want to separate from the hydrogen in the water. You know, in the air, it's the same thing. Anything, water vapor or anything that oxygen molecules are attached to will want to separate, will want to break the molecular bonds and begin to move away to another molecule like a methane molecule or something. And that's what causes heat, but it also causes the depletion of ozone in like little pinpricks in the ozone layer, pincushion holes.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I know you're really busy, and it was a pleasure having you on, and I hope that you'll come back and hang out with us again sometime if we're still around.
Well, these concepts are so deep that it takes a long time to just get the idea of what the Corexit does. You know, it takes a lot of explaining, you know, but I tried.
I think you do a great job, and I'm going to watch everything that you upload, and please keep up the good work. Can you give us the little shout-out that you do on your channel?
Well, you meant to welcome back to the What is God Network?
Yes.
We're wigging out on the things of God.
Thank you also, Jules and Mr. X. Check out NightWatch with Mr. X tonight at 10 Eastern Standard Time. And also, I want to tell everyone, on Thursday, my guest will be Deborah Dupree from The Examiner. She's a human rights advocate who's been following the sinkhole story in Louisiana and the sinkholes worldwide. I have Jeff Wefferson to thank for hooking us up with that interview. And his show, On the Brink, airs tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on UCY TV. Stay safe, everyone.